Path to Dharma podcast. Shannon and Shay here. Welcome,
Whoop.
welcome. We're here studying and reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, currently on the second, fourth canto, part two.
Yes.
Right. There's like a lot of
Second part, fourth
second,
canto.
right.
That's
Chapter
what
22. Sorry. That was
you
awful.
got
That was
it.
an awful introduction. Shay, start us over.
What is your path to Dharma?
Welcome back to Path to Dharma podcast. Shay and Shannon here. We're currently in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, fourth canto, part two. Looking forward to jumping in. I know before we began, you said you were kind of just doing a little recap. I would love a little recap. It's been, I don't know, a week and a half since we've read or something.
Yeah.
Um, where are we at here?
Okay, well, we're
We're in
still
chapter 22.
we're still talking to Pṛthu. And all that stuff just still happened. Where basically his sages were gonna remember going way back, there was like who Prithu even is.
Remind me, please. Could
Okay.
you?
Okay. So he's the son of the one guy that turned like was the little like evil dwarf guy or
Okay.
whatever. I'm sorry.
Yes.
This is the worst. We're so unprepared. Okay, no, I'm
We're
gonna go
not.
back. We're not unprepared, but I gotta go look it up because now I'm
Who
not
is
content.
Pṛthu? Is
In the
he in the
back.
glossary,
This
I
has
wonder?
got to be in the back. That's what I was just gonna do. I'm just gonna explain him wrong, and I know who he is, but
I, well, you gave me an image based off of what you said, so it did work.
okay. Well, it just
If
says
you
Prithu
remember.
Mahārāja, an empowered incarnation of Lord Krishna, who set an example of an ideal ruler. But
Okay.
his father was the one guy that wasn't the great king. And then
Yes.
the rishis were like gonna do a curse on him or whatever, and or they did. Ay,
Hold on.
you're gonna need to look this up.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yes, he is born from King Vina, a
There we go.
tyrannical ruler who disrupted the religious and social order of his kingdom. Vina's misrule led to the sages performing a sacrificial ceremony to end his reign. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
From the body of this deceased Vina, the sages extracted the essence of virtue and goodness, producing Maharaja Pṛthu and his consort.
Right.
So there we go. Yeah.
Okay. And then there was the whole thing with the sac.
Ah, yes, it's just reminding me. It says that Pṛthu is credited with milking the earth.
Right. That whole thing where he was angry with the earth
That
and the earth was like withholding her seed.
okay. This is yes. I remember now.
Right. Okay.
I remember. And then he like comes back to it. And then he comes
Right.
back to the masses and he kind of tells everything that just happened. And
They give him a bunch of praises and obeisances, and I think that's kind of where we're at.
okay. For some reason that felt like longer ago that we read that, but must not have been.
It's the story has played out over
Right. Right.
some time now.
Yep.
It's been one of the main stories of the fourth canto.
Yep.
Sorry.
hmm
Okay, are we ready? Well, let's do some obeisances actually.
Yeah, what are we thinking? All right. Before reciting the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one must first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering a service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise with transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact.
Let's go. Hare Krishna. Thank you for
Hare
that.
Krishna. I just want to shout out Megan from Niantic Yoga Studio for having an amazing session yesterday that brought me back to balance, by the way.
Yeah.
She's a real one.
Beautiful kirtan we did.
Beautiful kirtan that just lit me up. That was so amazing.
Yeah, right. Started with some lovely bhakti yoga
Yep.
first.
Yep.
Okay. So here we are, chapter 22, Pṛthu Maharaja's meeting with the four Kumaras. You
Yes.
remember that? We were really excited, and those are
Yes.
basically born of the mind of Brahma, and they appear as children.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Text 1. Go ahead.
Text 1. The great sage Maitreya said, while the citizens were thus praying to the most powerful King Pṛthu, the four Kumaras, who were as bright as the sun, arrived on the spot. That's cool.
Seeing the glowing effulgence of the four Kumaras, the masters of all mystic power, the king and his associates could recognize them as they descended from the sky. Of course, it's like, that's the four Kumaras are here.
Amazing. I just like am picturing them floating down in a group.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing the four Kumaras, Pṛthu Mahārāja was greatly anxious to receive them. Therefore, the king, with all his officers, very hastily got up, as anxiously as a conditioned soul whose senses are immediately attracted by the modes of material nature.
Mm.
Wow. Okay. It's like, oh, the cake's done.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Cookies are out of the oven.
What a metaphor.
I'm
What a
going there.
metaphor.
Right. The Kumaras show up and he pops right up.
Yeah.
Here comes the Kumaras.
When the great sages accepted their reception, according to the instructions of the sastras, yes, sastras, and finally took their seats offered by the king, influenced by the glories of the sages, immediately bowed down. Thus he worshipped the four Kumaras.
After this, the king took the water which had washed the lotus feet of the Kumaras and sprinkled it over his hair. By such
Mm.
respectful actions, the king, as an exemplary personality, showed how to receive a spiritually advanced personality.
Because he really is an example for all the people. They're still in um a crowd of people right now.
I think you're right because they've all just been praising him and basically.
Yeah. The four great sages were elder to Lord Shiva, and when they were seated on the golden throne, they appeared like blazing fire on an altar. Maharaja Pṛthu, out of his great gentleness and respect for them, began to speak with great restraint as follows.
King Pṛthu spoke. My dear great sages, auspiciousness personified, it is very difficult for even the mystic yogis to see you. Indeed, you are very rarely seen. I do not know what kind of pious activity I performed for you to grace me by appearing before me without difficulty.
The humble Pṛthu.
Yes.
Any person upon whom the Brahmins and Vaishnavas are pleased can achieve anything which is very rare to obtain in this world, as well as after death. Not only that, but one also receives the favor of the auspicious Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, who accompany the Brahmins and Vaishnavas.
Pṛthu Mahārāja continued, although you are traveling in all planetary systems, people cannot know you, just as they cannot know the super soul, although he is within everyone's heart as the witness of everything. Even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot understand the super soul.
Right there with them.
Yeah.
A person who is not very rich and is attached to family life becomes highly glorified when saintly persons are present in his home. The master and servants who are engaged in offering the exalted visitors water, a sitting place, and paraphernalia for reception are glorified, and the home itself is also glorified.
On the contrary, even though full of all opulence and material prosperity, any householder's house where the devotees of the Lord are never allowed to come in and where there is no water for washing their feet is to be considered a tree in which all venomous serpents live.
Wow.
Okay, so he's saying like your environment at home and how you react and treat somebody who's like an advanced soul shows up on you. What do you do? It reminds me of Queen Kunti, where she, like her story, where she basically was given as a servant to that one sage who was known to be cranky.
Yeah.
And she served him so well that he gave her the boon of the mantras of being able to have the the children, basically, which came in handy later.
This almost seems like a deeper analogy as well for your body being your home,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
right? You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and just like if you're never allowing in divine spiritual wellness or powers or whatever, then yeah, you are to be considered a tree. which all venomous serpents live.
Okay.
Text 12. Mahārāja Pṛthu offered his welcome to the four Kumāras, addressing them as the best of the Brahmins. He welcomed them, saying, "From the beginning of your birth, you strictly observed the vows of celibacy, and although you were experienced in the path of liberation, you are keeping yourselves just like small children."
Pṛthu Mahārāja inquired from the sages about persons entangled in this dangerous material existence because of their previous actions. Could such persons, whose only aim is sense gratification, be blessed with any good fortune?
Tell
Okay,
us.
please tell us. Good question.
Pṛthu Mahārāja continued, "My dear sirs, there is no need to ask about your good and bad fortune because you are always absorbed in spiritual bliss. The mental concoction of the auspicious and inauspicious does not exist in you."
I am completely assured that personalities like you are the only friends for persons who are blazing in the fire of material existence. I therefore ask you how, in this material world, can we very soon achieve the ultimate goal of life? Yeah, how? How?
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always anxious to elevate the living entities, who are his parts and parcels, and for their special benefit, the Lord travels all over the world in the form of self-realized persons like you.
Okay, I like that. And that's kind of like a simple kind of statement, but at the same time, it's just a reminder that actually God is on your side.
Yeah.
I'm getting a weird shadow now.
Is
That's
he's
fine.
just they're
It's
just ready. They're just
right,
ready to elevate you.
right. At all times, to the point of incarnating down here on earth to help us out.
Right. Back to Maitreya over here. Text
Yes.
17 is you.
Oh, sorry. The great sage Maitreya continued. Thus, Sanatkumara, the best of the celibates, after hearing the speech of Pṛthu Mahārāja, which was meaningful, appropriate, full of precise words, and very sweet to hear, smiled with full satisfaction and began to speak as follows.
Sanatkumara said, "My dear King Pṛthu, I'm very nicely questioned by you. Such questions are beneficial for all living entities, especially they are raised by you, who are always thinking of the good of others. Although you know everything, you ask such questions because that is the behavior of saintly persons. Such intelligence is befitting your position." They're like, yes, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Will you read that last sentence one more time? Because you slightly eeked out there for a second. Start at although. Like you cut out for a
Although you
second.
know everything, Although you know everything, you ask such questions because that is the behavior of saintly persons. Such intelligence is befitting your position.
Right. When there is a congregation of devotees, their discussions, questions, and answers become conclusive to both the speaker and the audience. Thus, such a meeting is beneficial for everyone's real happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sanatkumara continued, "My dear king, you already have an inclination to glorify the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such attachment is very difficult to achieve, but when one has attained such unflinching faith in the Lord, it automatically cleanses lusty desires from the core of the heart."
It has been conclusively decided in the scriptures, after due consideration, that the ultimate goal for the welfare of human society is detachment from the bodily concept of life, an increased and steadfast attachment for the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental, beyond the modes of material nature. There you go. That's it. Boom.
Yeah.
The ultimate goal for the welfare of human society is detachment from bodily life and attachment to God.
Yeah. Text 22. Attachment for the Supreme can be increased by practicing devotional service, inquiring about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, applying bhakti in life, worshipping the Yogasvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by hearing and chanting about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These actions are pious in themselves.
One has to make progress in spiritual life by not associating with persons who are simply interested in sense gratification and making money.
Boom, wait,
I feel like
just
I feel like
pause.
wait, there's like a whole list I feel like we should be making in here. Okay, first of all,
Yeah.
here's all the stuff we should do. And by the way, not only such persons, but one who associates with such persons should be avoided. So not only them, but like if they
People they
hang around
associate.
those people, right? One should mold his life in such a way that he cannot live in peace without drinking the nectar of the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. One can be thus elevated by being disgusted with the taste for sense enjoyment. Okay, Kumaras. They're telling it like it is. Okay. It's,
Oh, wow.
I mean, it is that whole like saying about tell me who you are by showing me your friends, for one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also their friends.
See, this is why I think it takes us so long to move on to a chapter. Like I'm just thinking about my life now based off that.
Right.
You know? Wow. All right. It's text 24. I'm sure we're
Yeah.
going to get some more information.
More.
A candidate for spiritual advancement must be nonviolent, must follow in the footsteps of great acharyas, must always remember the nectar of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, must follow the regulative principles without material desire, and, while following the regulative principles, should not blaspheme others.
Okay.
A devotee should lead a very simple life and not be disturbed by the duality of opposing elements. He should learn to tolerate them.
Of course, all of this is in alignment with what we've heard before, but there's a lot there. Yeah,
Yeah.
Prabhupada has 2 pages of commentary on that one. Text 25.
Mhm.
The devotee should gradually increase the culture of devotional service by constant hearing of the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These pastimes are like ornamental decorations on the ears of devotees. By rendering devotional service and transcending the material qualities, one can easily be fixed in transcendence in the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Mm.
Okay, so it's what we already know about, like the chanting of the names, the singing of the kirtan, the bhakti, all of
Yeah.
that, but also everything you're doing being focused on the Supreme. You can pull that shut. Would you just pull that shut? Just pull the door shut. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's why when we come into community, like yesterday, when we're singing kirtan with like 20 plus people, it feels
Right.
so transcendental and blissful because that's what we're doing is we are bhakti in action and also hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Right.
Okay. Text 26. Upon being fixed in his attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the grace of the spiritual master, and by awakening knowledge and detachment, the living entity, situated within the heart of the body and covered by the 5 elements, burns up his material surroundings exactly as fire, arising from wood, burns the wood itself.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just had to sit on that one for a second too, because just the thought of the more spiritually awakened, the more detached you become. This idea of that alone detaches you from the material nature.
Right?
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So just like it says, it burns up his material surroundings exactly as fire. So you're no longer even interested in any of that.
Right.
When a person becomes devoid of all material desires and liberated from all material qualities, he transcends distinctions between actions executed externally and internally. At that time, the difference between the soul and the supersoul, which was existing before self-realization, is annihilated. When a dream is over, there is no longer a distinction between the dream and the dreamer.
Can you read that one again?
Wow. Okay. That whole thing, all of it, each sentence had its own. I
Actually,
mean,
I
it's like,
think. Oh, wait, can I read it out loud this time, actually?
yeah, yeah.
When a person becomes devoid of all material desires and liberated from all material qualities, he transcends distinctions between actions executed externally and internally. Okay, wait, let's just pause there for a second.
Okay, so everything is manifest. That manifests is actually an internal process.
Well, it's neither external or internal, right?
Right.
It just
From one
is. Now it's
perception.
not, this is being done to me. Right.
Okay, right. That's what I
It's
was
no
trying to
longer
get
like
to. Right.
this isn't being done to me and I'm not doing it.
Right.
It
It's
just
like it's an
is.
internal process from our perception.
Right.
And we have an external reaction in our reality. And so
But
what they're saying is that that goes away at some
right.
point. You don't,
Right.
there's no distinction. Okay.
Right. At that time, the difference between the soul and the supersoul, which was existing before self-realization, is annihilated. So there is no difference now.
Right. That's where people say, I know I was one with God. Like I
Right.
know I felt I was a part of God. I was a part of the eternal. That's that.
When a dream is over, there is no longer a distinction between the dream and the dreamer.
Ugh, that's a good one. That's a good quote.
Yeah.
Okay. Text 28. When the soul exists for sense gratification, he creates different desires, and for that reason, he becomes subjected to designations. But when one is in the transcendental position, he is no longer interested in anything except fulfilling the desires of the Lord.
Mm.
Right.
Only because of the different causes does a person see a difference between himself and others, just as one sees the reflection of a body appearing differently manifested on water, on oil, or in a mirror. Only because of different causes does a person see a difference between himself and others.
Okay. What does that mean? Is that just perception? Is that just a different word of saying different perception?
I mean, different causes is just like the material energies. Only because
Yeah.
of like the three modes of material nature does a person see difference between himself and others.
Yeah, that could be.
That's what makes sense to me, right?
When one's mind and senses are attracted to sense objects for enjoyment, the mind becomes agitated. As a result of continually thinking of sense objects, one's real consciousness almost becomes lost,
Ah.
like the water in a lake that is gradually sucked up by the big grass straws on its bank. Ay, wow, there's another one. Wow, Kumara is just dropping truth bombs left and right. Okay.
We're going to release an episode, a bonus episode where we talk about Christmas time and Jesus. And this just hits so hard. And I need this to be like posted somewhere during that time because I found myself caught up in agitation of material senses and objects for enjoyment. Being like, okay, well, what else do I need? Or like,
Yeah,
what else can I
right,
buy right now? I'm not somebody who like spends a lot of money on things typically. But for some reason, this Christmas time, this like little chunk of, things are on
right,
sale, people are buying gifts, you're getting stuff for, you're shopping more, you're going to store, like things I don't normally do. And it
right.
literally it lost my conscious. I could see how if you get caught in that cycle, you can lose your consciousness in that,
You could spend your whole life going after that
like so easily.
easily and just unconsciously keep going for things and pleasures and material. And then people feel unsatisfied and they're like, why am I so unsatisfied
Yeah,
in life?
right,
Not to simplify it,
right.
everything wrong with people's lives. It's just this, what they're saying is again right in line with everything we've been hearing about
As a
how to
result of
live.
continually thinking of sense objects, one's real consciousness almost becomes lost, like the water in a lake that is gradually sucked up by the big grass straws on its banks.
So good.
That sums it up
Yeah,
perfectly.
yeah. I wait, it gets better. Wait, go read the next one. I think the next one is you.
When one deviates from his original consciousness, he loses the capacity to remember his previous position or recognize his present one. When remembrance is lost, all knowledge acquired is based on a false foundation. When this occurs, learned scholars consider that the soul is lost.
Wow. When this occurs, learned scholars consider that the soul is
Yeah, because
lost.
because if you're now, all knowledge that is acquired when you're moving from that space is based on a false foundation.
Wow.
And isn't that what it feels like kind of when you have like this spiritual awakening, right? It's like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, like everything that I just thought, all the knowledge I've acquired thus far was
Right.
based on a false foundation.
That was fake. That whole thing was fake. All that
Yeah.
time I spent. Yeah, no, that's spot on. Spot
Oh my
on,
God.
Kumaras.
Hare Krishna.
Seriously. Hari hari. Okay, text 32. There is no stronger obstruction to one.
Oh God, I'm sorry. I just can't get over this.
Wait. There is no stronger obstruction to one's self-interest than thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self-realization. I mean, yeah.
I'm about to I'm about to jump up and down.
Seriously, this reminds me of when Vidura went to Dhritarashtra and was like, "Get out of here. What are you doing?
Yeah,
Like, go self-actualize." I
right.
think it was Dhritarashtra.
I think it was too.
Ay, ay, ay. Okay. Double snap.
There
Double
is
snap.
no stronger obstruction to one's self-interest than thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self-realization.
Right. It's like, wow. How much time did I spend reading like sci-fi fantasy books in life?
Right?
Or just watching movies? Just, it's a wow. Mm. Scrolling phones. How much
Oh
time?
my God. Oh my
Okay.
God.
All right. Keep
Let's
going.
forgive ourselves and just
Yes.
let's and move on. I'm sure we're about to get hit with more. So, text 33. For
Yeah.
human society, constantly of thinking, constant for human society, constantly thinking of how we earn money and apply it for sense gratification brings about the destruction of everyone's interest.
It's true.
When one becomes devoid of knowledge and devotional service, he enters into species of life like those of trees and stones.
Wow. Okay. You might as well be a tree at that point. Those who strongly desire to cross the oceans of nescience must not associate with the modes of ignorance, for hedonistic activities are the greatest obstruction to realization of religious principles, economic development, regulated sense gratification, and at least liberation. Okay. That's really what he's talking about when he's talking about like the hedonistic activities. It's the sense gratification things. That's what it is. Ay.
Out of the four principles, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, liberation has to be taken very seriously. The other three are subject to destruction by the stringent law of nature, death.
Right. So why should you be not paying attention to the ultimate divine purpose of your life? Because the sense gratification is
Ugh.
it's very intoxicating, you know, it's very much
Well, it's what,
here.
and it's like
It's
what our nation has been built off of. I mean, it's everywhere around you.
well, it's our
Commercial,
everyday, it's what we're
billboards.
right, it's what we're interacting with every day. Like if God was on the corner and I could, you know, see Krishna standing down there, like that'd be very different. But I live in a world where it's like McDonald's and Burger King. Whatever. Kali Yuga. Okay, see our other episode. Are we still in the Kali Yuga? I don't know. Okay. I think so, but okay. Sorry. Text 36. We accept as blessings different states of higher life, distinguishing them from lower states of life. But we should know that such distinctions exist only in relation to the interchange of the modes of material nature. Yeah. Actually, these states of life have no permanent existence, for all of them will be destroyed by the supreme controller.
Right.
Okay, that's that whole thing of like, what do I prefer to be happening? What is this higher state to be? And he's saying, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're like the richest person on earth or like you have nothing. These states of life have no permanent existence.
You cut out for a second, but I'm sure you got that. I'm sure you got whatever you said. You can hear me though.
Yes, I can hear you. Let's just
I
go
heard you
on.
fin I heard yeah, I heard you finish the verse.
Okay,
So
go ahead. You're on 37.
Sanatkumara advised the king. Therefore, my dear King Pṛthu, try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within everyone's heart along with the individual soul, in each and every body, either moving or not moving. The individual souls are fully covered by the gross material body and subtle body made of the life, air, and intelligence.
Right. The Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests himself as one with the cause and effect within this body, but one who has transcended the illusory energy by deliberate consideration, which clears the misconception of a snake for a rope, can understand the Paramatma is eternally transcendental to the material creation and situated in pure internal energy. Thus, the Lord is transcendental to all material contamination. Unto him only must one surrender.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
The devotees who are always engaged in the service of the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord can very easily overcome hard-knotted desires for fruitive activities. Because this is very difficult, the non-devotees, the jnanis and yogis, although trying to stop the waves of sense gratification, cannot do so. Therefore, you are advised to engage in the devotional service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva.
The oceans of nescience is very difficult to cross because it is infested with many dangerous sharks. Although those who are non-devotees undergo severe austerities and penance to cross that ocean, we recommend that you simply take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, which are like boats for crossing the ocean. Although the ocean is difficult to cross, by taking shelter of his lotus feet, you will overcome all dangers. Yeah.
The great sage Maitreya continued, being thus enlightened in the complete spiritual knowledge by the son of Brahmā, one of the Kumaras, who was complete in spiritual knowledge, the king worshipped them in the following words.
The king said, O Brahman, O powerful one, formerly Lord Vishnu showed me his causeless mercy, indicating that you would come to my house, and to confirm that blessing, you have all come.
My dear Brahman, you have carried out the order thoroughly because you are also compassionate as the Lord. It is my duty, therefore, to offer you something, but all I possess are but remnants of food taken by great saintly persons. What shall I give?
The king continued, Therefore, my dear Brahmins, my life, wife, children, home, furniture, and household paraphernalia, my kingdom, strength, land, and especially my treasury are all offered unto you.
Since only a person who is completely educated according to the principles of Vedic knowledge deserves to be the commander-in-chief, ruler of the state, the first to chastise and the proprietor of the whole planet, Pṛthu Mahārāja offered everything to the Kumaras.
The Kshatriyas, Vaisyas, and Shudras eat their food by virtue of the Brahmins' mercy. It is the Brahmins who enjoy their own property, clothe themselves with their own property, and give charity with their own property.
Pṛthu Mahārāja continued, how can such persons who have rendered unlimited service by explaining the path of self-realization in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and whose explanations are given for our enlightenment with complete conviction and Vedic evidence, be repaid except by folded palms containing water for their satisfaction? Such great personalities can be satisfied only by their own activities, which are distributed amongst human society out of their unlimited mercy.
The great sage Maitreya continued, Thus being worshipped by Mahārāja Pṛthu, the four Kumaras, who were masters of devotional service, became very pleased. Indeed, they appeared in the sky and praised the character of the king, and everyone observed them.
Amongst these great personalities, Mahārāja Pṛthu was the chief by virtue of his fixed position in relation to spiritual enlightenment. He remains satisfied as one who has achieved all success in spiritual understanding.
Being self-satisfied, Mahārāja Pṛthu executed his duties as perfectly as possible according to the time and his situation, strength, and financial position. His only aim in all his activities was to satisfy the absolute truth. In this way, he duly acted.
Mahārāja Pṛthu completely dedicated himself to be an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, transcendental to material nature. Consequently, all the fruits of his activities were dedicated to the Lord, and he always thought of himself as the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of everything.
Mahārāja Pṛthu, who was very opulent due to the prosperity of his entire empire, remained at home as a householder. Since he was never inclined to utilize his opulences for the gratification of his senses, he remained unattached, exactly like the sun, which is unaffected in all circumstances. Right.
Being situated in the liberated position of devotional service, Pṛthu Mahārāja not only performed all fruitive activities, but also begot 5 sons by his wife, Archie. Indeed, all his sons were begotten according to his own desire.
After begetting 5 sons named Vijitvasa, Dhumrakesa, Haryaksa, Dravina, and Vrika, Pṛthu Mahārāja continued to rule the planet. He accepted all the qualities of the deities who governed all other planets.
Since Mahārāja Pṛthu was a perfect devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he wanted to protect the Lord's creation by pleasing the various citizens according to their various desires. Therefore, Pṛthu Mahārāja used to please them in all respects by his words, mentality, works, and gentle behavior.
Mahārāja Pṛthu became as celebrated a king as Somaraja, the king of the moon. He was also powerful and exacting, like the sun god, who distributes heat and light at the same time, exacts all the planetary waters. And at the same time, exacts all the planetary waters.
Mahārāja Pṛthu was so strong and powerful that one could disobey his order Mahārāja Pṛthu was so strong and powerful that no one could disobey his orders any more than one could conquer fire itself. He was so strong that he was compared to Indra, the king of the heaven, whose power is insuperable. On the other hand, Mahārāja Pṛthu was also as tolerant as the earth, and in fulfilling various desires of human society, he was like heaven itself.
Just as rainfall satisfies everyone's desires, Mahārāja Pṛthu used to satisfy everyone. He was like the sea in that no one could understand his depths, and he was like Meru, the king of hills, in the fixity of his purpose.
Mahārāja Pṛthu's intelligence and education were exactly like that of Yamaraja, the superintendent of death. His opulence was comparable to the Himalaya mountains, where all valuable jewels and metals are stocked. He possessed great riches like Kuvera, the treasurer of heavenly planets, and no one could reveal his secrets, for they were like the demigod Varunas.
In his bodily strength and in the strength of his senses, Mahārāja Pṛthu was as strong as the wind, which can go anywhere and everywhere. As far as his intolerance was concerned, he was just like all-powerful Rudra, expansion of Lord Shiva, or Sadashiva.
In his bodily beauty, he was just like Cupid, and in his thoughtfulness, he was like a lion. In his affection, he was like Svayambhuva, and in his ability to control, he was like Lord Brahmā.
In his personal behavior, Pṛthu Mahārāja exhibited all good qualities, and in spiritual knowledge, he was exactly like Brahaspati. In self-control, he was like the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, as far as his devotional servants was concerned. As far as his devotional service was concerned, he was a great follower of devotees who were attached to cow protection and the rendering of all service to the spiritual master and the Brahmins. He was perfect in his shyness and in his gentle behavior, and when he engaged in some philanthropic activity, he worked as if he were working for his own personal self.
Hmm. Throughout the whole universe, in the higher, lower, and middle planetary systems, Pṛthu Mahārāja's reputation was loudly declared, and all ladies and saintly persons heard his glories, which were as sweet as the glories of Lord Ramachandra.
Okay. And that ends chapter 22.
That was one of those chapters that was like, it hit me. You know, some chapters
Yeah.
we read and it kind of just like goes over my head a little bit. For some reason, that one is like speaking to the personality of Godhead, which is in my chest. You know,
Yeah.
that one was that is really making me consider a lot of things.
A lot of deep truths there.
A lot of deep truths there. And I say it again, like like you read this and it's like, oh yeah, like so easy. Like let's just not, participate in relationship with people who are only thinking about gathering money and sense satisfaction. But then it's like, oh, okay, but I go to work and I don't necessarily you do pick your coworkers in some sense, but in some sense, no, right? Or
Right.
like I'm going to the grocery store and I'm going to interact with this person, or I'm teaching a class and so it's like, okay, that is a lot to consider there. There's just a lot to consider there in that whole chapter.
Definitely agree.
And like, how can we just put our liberation of self first? But
Especially,
also, it's like a ripple effect for the earth, for the world, as we just saw King Pṛthu.
yeah.
He did that, and it was a ripple effect to everyone in the universe.
I mean, detachment is the answer.
Right.
But I mean, I guess it's like, okay, I still have to eat dinner because I have a body that gets hungry. So is the difference between eating that dinner for the purpose of like, that's so good, that tastes amazing, I love that. I can
Right.
just really fill my sense gratification up with whatever I'm eating. Or is it just to sustain my body, I have to eat? So I look at it as a more, um, almost like a more sacred kind of intake of energy.
Right.
So what am I doing? Can I exist in the world?
Well, and it's in service to God, right? It's like I'm feeding myself so that I can then be of service. Because you
Right,
have
right.
to, we're bodily manifestations here. We got to eat
Yeah,
and drink and do all the things, but it's I think doing it in a flavor of service, so that you can
right.
show up and put your liberation first. And when you do that, you just irrevocably become a servant to God.
Okay, are we going to hit up chapter 23?
We can, but I think I do need a moment to sit here and breathe about that last
Okay,
chapter.
okay. Okay, moving on to chapter 23. Maharaja Prithu's going back home. He rules the whole entire earth at this point.
Right.
So he is home in that sense, but going back to the palace, I guess. Okay, let's find out. Chapter 23, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Fourth Canto. At the last stage of his life, when Maharaja Pṛthu saw himself getting old, that great soul, who was king of the world, divided whatever opulence he had accumulated among all kinds of living entities, moving and non-moving. He arranged pensions for everyone according to religious principles, and after executing the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in complete coordination with him, he dedicated his sons unto the earth, which was considered to be his daughter. Then Maharaja Pṛthu left the presence of his citizens, who were almost lamenting and crying from feeling separation from the king, and went to the forest alone with his wife to perform austerities. So even King Pṛthu at the end walks off into the forest.
Mm-hmm. After retiring from family life, Maharaja Pṛthu strictly followed the regulations of retired life and underwent severe austerities in the forest. He engaged in these activities as seriously as he had formerly engaged in leading the government and conquering everyone.
I mean, honestly, how many times we've seen a king just give his kingdom up and go sit in the forest because it was his time to be enlightened? And we just don't have that concept of the exchange of power going down like that. People don't
Right.
often, in power, don't often just be like, okay, I'm giving up my power.
Right.
In the Tapuvana, Maharaja Prithu sometimes ate the trunks and roots of trees, and sometimes he ate fruit and dried leaves, and for some weeks he drank only water. Finally, he lived simply by breathing air.
We've seen this happen.
Yeah, right. Just detaches from all the things.
Following the principles of forest living in the footsteps of the great sages and munis, Prithu Maharaj accepted 5 kinds of heating processes during the summer season, exposing himself to torrents of rain in the rainy season, and in the winter stood in the water up to his neck. He also used to simply lie down on the floor to sleep.
Sure. And he had everything an earthly human could want. And this is what he's picking to do. Maharaja Prithu underwent all these severe austerities in order to control his words and his senses, to refrain from discharging his semen, and to control the life air within his body. All this he did for the satisfaction of Krishna. He had no other purpose. So truly
Mm-hmm.
just taking full control of his body.
Mm-hmm. By thus practicing severe austerities, Maharaja Prithu gradually became steadfast in spiritual life and completely free from all desires for fruitive activities. He also practiced breathing exercises to control his mind and senses, and by such control, he became completely free from all desires for fruitive activity.
Thus, the best among the human beings, Maharaja Prithu followed that path of spiritual advancement which was advised by Sanatkumara. That is to say, he worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna.
Maharaja Prithu thus engaged completely in devotional service, executing the rules and regulations strictly according to the principles, 24 hours daily. Thus his love and devotion unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, developed and became unflinching and fixed.
By regularly discharging devotional service, Prithu Maharaja became transcendental in mind and could therefore constantly think of the lotus feet of the Lord. Because of this, he became completely detached and attained perfect knowledge by which he could transcend all doubt. Thus, he was freed from the clutches of false ego and the material conception of life.
When he became completely free from the conception of bodily life, Maharaja Prithu realized Lord Krishna sitting in everyone's hearts at the Paramatma. Being thus able to get all instructions from him, he gave up all other practices of yoga and jnana. He was not even interested in the perfection of the yoga and jnana systems, for he thoroughly realized that devotional service to Krishna is the ultimate goal of life, and that unless the yogis and jnanis become attracted to Krishna Katha, narrations about Krishna, their illusions concerning existence can never be dispelled.
Interesting. In due course of time, when Pritha Maharaja was to give up his body, he fixed his mind firmly upon the lotus feet of Krishna, and thus, completely situated on the Brahma Bhuta platform, he gave up the material body.
And we are reading Prabhupada's translation. So I feel like text 12, I feel like people could have thoughts about that.
Probably so.
Text 14. When Maharaja Prithu practiced a particular yogic sitting posture, he blocked the doors of his anus with his ankles, pressed his right and left calves, and gradually raised his life air upward, passing it on to the circle of his navel, up to his heart and throat, and finally pushed it upward to the central position between his eyebrows.
In this way, Prithu Maharaja gradually raised his air of life up to the hole in his skull, whereupon he lost all desire for material existence. Gradually, he merged his air of life with the totality of air, his body with the totality of earth. and the fire within his body with the totality of fire. So interesting. He goes out the crown. Basically, it seems like he's um, describing,
Mm-hmm.
but he basically becomes one with everything.
Which we've seen happen before too, and this
Mhm.
is in the Gita as well.
Mhm.
Text 16. In this way, according to the different positions of the various parts of the body, Pṛthu Mahārāja merged the wholes of his senses with the sky, his bodily liquids, such as blood and various secretions, with the totality of water, and he merged earth with water, then water with fire, fire with air, air with sky, and so on.
He amalgamated the mind with the senses and the senses with the sense objects according to their respective positions. And he also amalgamated the material ego with the total material energy, Mahatattva. Wow.
Pṛthu Mahārāja then offered the total designation of the living entity unto the supreme controller of illusory energy. Being released from all the designations by which the living entity become entrapped, he became free by knowledge and renunciation, and by the spiritual force of his devotional service. In this way, being situated in his original constitutional position of Krishna consciousness, he gave up his body as a Prabhu, or controller of the senses.
The queen, the wife of Pṛthu Mahārāja, whose name was Archie, followed her husband into the forest. Since she was a queen, her body was very delicate. Although she did not deserve to live in the forest, she voluntarily touched her lotus feet to the ground.
Although she was not accustomed to such difficulties, Queen Archie followed her husband in the regulative principles of living in the forest like great sages. She lied down on the ground and ate only fruits, flowers, and leaves, and because she was not fit for these activities, she became frail and thin. Yet because of the pleasure she derived in serving her husband, she did not feel any difficulties.
When when Queen Archie saw that her husband, who had been so merciful to her and the earth, no longer showed symptoms of life, she lamented for a little while and then built a fiery pyre on top of a hill and placed the body of her husband on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
After this, the queen executed the necessary funerary 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 functions.
Funerary.
Funerary. After this, the queen executed the necessary funerary functions and offered oblations of water. After bathing in the river, she offered obeisances to various demigods situated in the sky in the different planetary systems. She then circumambulated the fire, and while thinking of the lotus feet of her husband, entered its flames.
Wow. Okay. After observing this brave act performed by the chaste wife Archie, the wife of the great King Pṛthu, many thousands of the wives of demigods, along with their husbands, offered prayers to the queen, for they were very much satisfied.
At that time, the demigods were situated on top of Mandara Hill, and other wives began to shower flowers on the funeral pyre and began to talk amongst themselves as follows.
The wives of the demigods said, "All glories to Queen Archie. We can see that this queen of the great King Pṛthu, the emperor of all the kings of the world, has served her husband with mind, speech, and body, exactly as the goddess of fortune served the supreme personality of Godhead, Yajnesha, or Vishnu."
The wives of the demigods continued. Just see how this chaste lady, Archie, by dint of her inconceivable pious activities, is still following her husband upward as far as we can see.
In this material world, every human being has a short span of life, but those who are engaged in devotional service go back home, back to Godhead, for they are actually on the path of liberation. For such persons, there is nothing which is not available.
Any person who engages himself within this material world in performing activities that necessitate great struggle, and who, after obtaining a human form of life, which is a chance to attain liberation from miseries, undertakes the difficult tasks of fruitive activities, must be considered to be cheated and envious of his own self.
The great sage Maitreya
I feel like I need
continued.
to reread that actually.
Okay, go ahead.
I read that kind of choppily and I didn't really understand it.
Okay.
Any person who engages himself within this material world in performing activities that necessitate great struggle, and who, after obtaining a human form of life, which is a chance to attain liberation from miseries, undertakes the difficult tasks of fruitive activities, must be considered to be cheated and envious of his own self.
So if you're doing things that are making you struggle, basically, that's where it says you must be considered to be cheated and envious of your own self.
Oh, I see. Yes.
I think that's what it means.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Text 29. The great sage Maitreya continued speaking. My dear Vidura, when the wives of the denizens of heaven were thus talking amongst themselves, Queen Archie reached the planet which her husband, Mahārāja Pṛthu, the topmost self-realized soul, had attained.
Maitreya continued. The greatest of all devotees, Mahārāja Pṛthu, was very powerful, and his character was liberal, magnificent, and magnanimous. Thus I have described him to you as far as possible.
Any person who describes the great characteristics of King Pṛthu with faith and determination, whether he reads or hears of them himself or helps others to hear of them, is certain to attain the very planet which Mahārāja Pṛthu attained. In other words, such a person also returns home to the Vaikuntha planets, back to Godhead. Let's go.
If one hears of the characteristics of Pṛthu Mahārāja and is a Brahmin who becomes perfectly qualified with Brahminical powers, if he is a Satriya, he becomes a king of the world. If he is a Vaishya, he becomes a master of other Vaishyas and many animals. And if he is a Sudra, he becomes the topmost devotee.
It does not matter whether one is man or woman. Anyone who, with great respect, hears this narration of Mahārāja Pṛthu will become the father of many children if he is without children, and will become the richest of men if he is without money.
Also, one who hears this narration 3 times will become very reputable if he is not recognized in society, and he will become a great scholar if he is illiterate. In other words, hearing of the narrations of Pṛthu Mahārāja is so auspicious that it drives away all bad luck.
Wow. Okay, so this is one. If we personally listen to this episode 2 more times.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, by hearing the narration of Pṛthu Mahārāja, one can become great, increase his duration of life, gain promotion to the heavenly planets, and counteract the contaminations of this age of Kali. In addition, one can promote the causes of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Therefore, from all sides, it is advisable for a materialistic person who is interested in such things to read and hear the narrations of the life and character of Pṛthu Mahārāja.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's why you should know this stuff. That's why you should read.
If a king who is desirous of attaining victory and ruling power chants the narration of Pṛthu Mahārāja 3 times before going forth on his chariot, all subordinate kings will automatically render all kinds of taxes unto him, as they rendered them unto Mahārāja Pṛthu, simply upon his order.
Wow. A pure devotee who is executing the different processes of devotional service may be situated in the transcendental position, being completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. But even he, while discharging devotional service, must hear, read, and induce others to hear about the character and life of Pṛthu Mahārāja.
The great sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, I have as far as possible spoken the narrations about Pṛthu Mahārāja which enrich one's devotional attitude. Whoever takes advantage of these benefits also goes back home, back to Godhead, like Mahārāja Pṛthu.
Whoever, with great reverence and adoration, regularly reads, chants, and describes the history of Mahārāja Pṛthu's activities will certainly increase unflinching faith and attraction for the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord's lotus feet are the boat by which one can cross the ocean of nescience. Ay, ay, ay. Very nice. Really good. Thus ends the Fourth Canto, 23rd chapter of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Okay, this probably is a good place to stop at this point. That was really good.
Yeah, it
So much to
was.
consider, so much to think about, as always.
Yeah, really very good.
Okay, well, we're gonna go back to Wednesdays. So you'll be seeing this on Wednesday, hopefully. Um, if you just come across it and you just listen to this whole thing, thank you so much. Welcome.
Mm-hmm.
We're so grateful to have you here with us because uh, part of what we're doing feels like some devotional service, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, where we want to have some conversation with the other people who are on our same spiritual path.
Mm-hmm.
So, hence, that's the other reason we're doing this. We want to see our own spiritual progression for sure. And so we thought it would be interesting to record it, but also to reach out to the community who feels the same way because
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of sitting here in the middle of America with not a lot of devotees around us. So we're so grateful for interacting with you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, likewise.
Okay, well, check out our bonus episode. And otherwise, we hope to see you soon. We did try to do a live the other morning if you caught us, and we just could not get the internet to
Technology. Yeah.
agree. It wouldn't. We were having a storm and the Wi-Fi was coming in and out, so
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't meant to be. But love and blessings and healing to all. And Hare Krishna. We'll see you soon.
Hare Krishna. Till next time.